Hello, everybody. This is Stan Scott again with Foggy Bottom Line Media with this week's Foggy Bottom Line Breakdown. I'm joined by my co-host, Scott Konopasek. We're recording this on Wednesday morning, February 4th, and you should be seeing this on Thursday afternoon. We're going to talk today about there's a lot going on. He's talking about nationalizing elections, but a big Epstein files drop came on Friday afternoon. 3 million different files, and there's a lot of crazy stuff in this, folks. A lot of crazy stuff. And Scott and I are going to get into it and share our thoughts on this, what we think could happen. But before I do, I want to ask again, please subscribe, hit that bell so you'll get notifications. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok. And we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So check us out wherever you can. Let us know what you think. Comment, share with your friends. We need a few more subscribers so we can go live on YouTube. If we can get to that point, then we can go live on YouTube and we can do some more live content, which I'd really like to do. So Epstein, Scott, I noticed that you posted, was it yesterday on Facebook? You posted some thoughts on the Epstein file dump, and I thought that would be a good place to start to let you go ahead and share some of your thinking that you shared in that Facebook post.
Sure. I think this whole Epstein files saga is the classic example of a government cover-up. I mean, the stories keep changing, and as more and more things dribble out, it's becoming more and more obvious that it's an amateur effort to cover up and protect people, important people, from the truth. Before Congress passed the law that required DOJ to release the files, they said they didn't have any files. There was no such thing as Epstein files. And then we found out that there was, and then they had to disclose it. They had 30 days. Well, at the end of 30 days, they threw some breadcrumbs out there and said, oh, it's taking us a long time because we have to redact all this stuff. Okay? Because the law said, redact to protect innocent people and victims in ongoing investigations or whatever. It gave them a little bit of an out. So they gave us a couple thousand documents finally. And then they gave us a few more and a few more. Now, finally, out of nowhere, we get millions of documents just showing up. And we've heard that there's probably another 5 million out there that they're not sharing with us. So the whole timeline for releasing these things and the whole effort to cover it up and to slow walk it, sandbag it, it is really obvious. And they really hung their hat on the burden of redacting as being the reason why they couldn't release everything. Well, the credibility of that excuse kind of goes away when you look at what a sloppy, incomplete, amateurish job that they've done. They've redacted whole documents. They sent documents that everything's redacted. And they've redacted the names of the perpetrators or potential perpetrators, so we don't get sued. But they didn't do a great job at redacting the names of the victims, which is really pretty crazy and disappointing to me, especially when this last dump, they put a lot of photographs in the dump, unredacted, nude pictures of these young women with identifying information. What kind of a ramshackle operation was that? And they can't say that these nude photos slipped through because they for that section of files, they put a requirement that you had to be 18 in order to access it. So they knew what they had, and they either deliberately punished the victims by disclosing who they were, or they're just so inept that they missed it. I don't know. Do you think it was deliberate?
I think they're just sloppy amateurs who have no clue what the hell they're trying to do. This is classic fascism. You fire all the smart people and the people who might push back and say, maybe this isn't a good idea, in favor of loyal people who may or may not have any competence. And, you can tell these people don't know what they're doing because that first little tranche you talked about that came out after 30 days, they redacted this stuff by using Word to basically highlight in black the parts they wanted to redact. So anyone with Word could open that file and undo the highlight, and the redaction is gone, right?
Right.
It's also a great point that they're redacting the names of perpetrators, which on some level you can understand, given that these are all allegations, right? And there's nothing proven about any of this. But they don't redact some of the names of the victims, which, if not sloppy, then that looks like a deliberate attempt to shame victims here, which I don't know if they're doing that, but it sure looks like it could be. And, at the end of the day, what we have here, folks, what you have here is direct evidence. Now, some of the stuff that they've released are basically just lists of allegations from an FBI tip line, right? Where someone called in and could say, I could call in and could say, hey, Donald Trump did that, or Jeffrey Epstein did this, and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't mean it's true. So I get some of that. But there's a lot of stuff in here that we'll talk about here shortly that suggests that there is a group of elite people, a group of very wealthy people, many of whom are now running our government, who were associating with someone who is a known convicted sex criminal. He was convicted in a very easy deal. He should have gone away for life in like 2010, and they basically let him off for nothing because the man was a pedophile. He was a rapist, right? That's pretty much well established. And even if the people named like Clinton or Trump or Ludwig, all these guys, even if they didn't actually participate, they knew what was going on that island when they went there. And even if it didn't happen at the party they attended, they knew what Epstein was going to do the next day or did the day before or after the party, right? While they're sleeping upstairs in a mansion. So the mere fact that these people were associating with this guy suggests that there's this group of elite wealthy people out there who think they'll never see any consequences for any kind of wrongdoing they do, whether legal, professional, or even just being shamed for associating with all this. And you make a good point in your Facebook post, Scott, because I talked about that tip line. And folks, if I call an FBI tip line and make an accusation or say, hey, I saw this, I'm a whistleblower, right? This is what I saw. They always fill out what they call a Form 302. And it's basically a notarized witness statement. This witness came in, at least two people listened to it, right? We're signing off that this is what they said. They sign off that this is what they said. Doesn't make it true, but this is how they record it. And one of the most interesting things about this most recent dump is that there is not a single document in any of it that was generated internally by the FBI or the Department of Justice or any other law enforcement agency. It's all just emails and pictures, and we'll get to it in a minute, but because I'm going to show a screenshot of this. Have you seen Scott? Did you see the one that the young girl who she basically was writing a diary, and there are pages from the diary, and she actually wrote it in kind of a code, right? She put what she wrote in kind of a code, and she talks about, if I'm reading it right, she talks about the day her baby was born and taken away from her. And Ghislaine Maxwell was there when that happened. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I'm not surprised, but this is new to me.
Here's a screenshot of it, folks. Take a look at this, and you can see these cryptic letters. It's 2 lines of letters, and you have to read it a certain way. Like you have to read down and across. It's really hard to read, but some of this is transcribed, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes, in the description, so you can take a look at this file yourself. But she talks about Mar-a-Lago several times, right? And this is, I think this is the girl, the young girl who at one point claimed that Donald Trump raped her. She got pregnant. She had the baby. They got rid of the child, and then Trump and others told her, "We'll kill your whole family." Basically, we'll kill your whole family if you ever tell anybody about this. Right now, all of that's allegations, okay, and supposedly written by a 12 or 13-year-old girl. So take that for what you will, because everyone knows teenagers are teenagers. But if any of that is true, then something needs to be done about this. And the amazing thing to me, and I want to know what you think on this, Scott, is the only person who has faced any kind of consequences for this is Prince Andrew.
Right. Now, maybe the former British ambassador to the U.S. is, going to be paying a price, but no Americans, no powerful people in our government. But as I've been thinking about this Epstein stuff, I harken back to my experience as a Army intelligence officer, where we would get tons of information, just raw data, just all kinds of snippets of information, and we would just get bombarded every day, and we had to sift through that every day and analyze it and turn it into a story. What did it mean, or give it some meaning? Because information and intelligence are two different things. So what DOJ has done here is they've dumped all the information out, but they've withheld the intelligence, which is the interpretation, the work product of all that information.
Good way to put it.
And we don't know what discussions they had about should they charge this person or not, and what's the rationale, or did they do an investigation, and where's the investigation report? None of the things that tell us what they've done over the years with all this information, it has been released, which is highly problematic.
And folks, that's an underappreciated component of intelligence gathering and information sort of gathering, is that we talk about the surveillance state and how now there's face cameras everywhere, and there's all this data and all this video everywhere, and satellites over Iran and Iraq and all that stuff, and all that's great. But if you don't have smart, well-trained people to interpret all that and figure out what it all means, then it's really just a pile of garbage that you have to sift through, looking for that lost wedding ring, right, that you forgot that ended up in the landfill. And it's really problematic when they do it this way. Now, the good news is that there's a lot of people who care about this. And 3 million files, 3 million pieces of information. It's important to remember that when we say 3 million files, we don't mean 3 million file folders with more documents inside of those file folders. We mean 3 million pieces of information. So one email, one photograph, one letter written, one birthday card, right? One video, one document the FBI put together of allegations someone made, that kind of thing. But that's a lot. But there's also a lot of people looking through this stuff. Okay, and in fact, one of the things that's really kind of telling about all this is that you're getting a lot more information about this from amateurs who have YouTube channels like this one than you're getting from CBS and NBC and ABC and Fox News and all those folks, and they have the resources to go through this stuff. They could hire me, right, for $30 an hour to just look through all this stuff and tell them what they need to pay attention to. They have the resources to hire 100 people to do that, but they're apparently not. But someone's looking at it. it'll take a while, but it's going to come out. And
Right.
I don't know, maybe another, talking about, consequences and prosecution. Can you name the only two people who have been subpoenaed to testify before Congress about this?
Oh yeah, that's Clinton, the two
Yeah,
Clintons.
Bill and Hillary.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the only part of the QAnon conspiracy that is kind of playing out before our eyes. I mean, I think QAnon may have been right about the fact that there's this pedophile ring, but they just identified the wrong perpetrators. And
Well,
this has all. I'm going to come back to what I said at the beginning. This is a cover up.
yeah,
This is a deliberate, intentional cover up. They're giving us all this information, but they're not giving us the work products. For 20 years, they've been working with this information. Bureaucracies create documents and write reports.
Right.
Lawyers especially. That's how they make their living.
Right.
Where is all that work product?
Right.
That was based upon all this information. They're doing a smokescreen by just releasing all the data and pretending like there's no work products out there, any analysis, anything that they've used to decide to indict someone or not indict someone,
Right.
to investigate someone or not investigate someone, to bring charges or not bring charges. And that's really what we need to know is what have they done with all this information? And as long as they're hiding the ball, we're going to continue just to give all these perpetrators the benefit of the doubt, while the victims are left without any resolution. They're being punished more with their names and identities and likenesses being put out there in the public arena. There's only a small group of these victims that have come out publicly and identified themselves. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of victims who have not chosen to come out, who have been outed by the release of all these documents. So the victims, and we don't talk enough about the victims, I don't think. The victims continue to be victimized, and the perpetrators continue to perpetrate. And the government just lets it happen, is a party to it.
It says a lot about American society that there are dozens of women making these claims, some of which support each other, right? So some of their claims are sort of mutually supportive. They must have been in the same place at the same time because they're describing the same events. But nobody seems to want to believe them, right? Now, eyewitness testimony is not the best you can get. But when dozens of women are saying that this stuff happened, there's got to be some kind of fire where that smoke is coming from, right? And like you say, the work product, the stuff that attorneys, that prosecutors used with respect to whether to indict or charge someone, it has not been given to us yet. So all of this raw information is now out there, and trust me, Blanche said they're not going to produce any more of it. I suspect that if there is more, they will, because Congress is, even Republicans in Congress want this stuff out. It may be because they see a possibility of going after someone like Clinton, which, by the way, the Clintons have agreed to testify. They had refused to earlier. They've agreed to do it. And I think they're doing it now as a way to set a standard, right? Someone, and I think either one of us, Scott, would have advised them of this, is like, look, you want to be the only ones that testified, right? You want to be the ones that said, yep, I'll talk about it. Let's get on there. And then that forces others to do the same thing, right? Now, it's telling that Republicans in Congress have only, gone after a Democrat. And honestly, I tell you what, and Scott, I know you feel the same way because we've talked about this. I don't give a damn who is in these files. I don't give a damn who raped young girls or sexually abused women of any age or trafficked in human beings for prostitution. I don't give a damn who it is. They need to go to jail and stay there forever.
Right.
Clinton, I don't care. I don't care. Barack Obama, I don't care. Anyone who's part of that or knew it was happening and didn't say anything needs to go under the jail until they rot. That's how I feel about it. So put it all out there. Let's get them all, because these people need to be stopped. They think they're untouchable because they're rich, and they need to be stopped. So,
right. And it's not just wealth; it's also power.
Right.
These young victims have revealed who their who assaulted them,
Right.
who raped them. There's a list of those names, but they're not. Those are being withheld.
Yep.
We know who did it. Someone knows who did it. The victims know who did it. The victims' attorneys know who did it. DOJ knows who's alleged to have done it. But that information is not making it out of the system. And we give the benefit of the doubt. We're really careful to protect the privacy of those who are alleged to have committed the crimes. And we're too deferential to that. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And when something's been smoking for 20 years, right, and you've been in that room and it's been smoking for 20 years, there's going to be some fire there. Why else are you hanging around? And why are those parties so cool that you had to go to them? What was the big attraction? Did they have a great bartender? Did they have a great dart tournament? You had great poker games. What was it? What was the appeal? Why did everybody go repeatedly to those parties and associate with Epstein?
Years ago in Louisville, I don't know if it's still there or not, but years ago in downtown Louisville, Scott, there was a bar, basically a strip club, right? Gentlemen's club, where the waitresses were topless. And on Friday, they had a prime rib special. And I never went. I've never been there. But reportedly, it was the best prime rib in town. And all the high-powered attorneys from Louisville would go there on Friday for the prime rib special. I'm a little bit suspicious that the prime rib was the very big attraction there. But, yeah. Go into an island and party and the private jets and all that. And listen, folks, Donald Trump ran in 2016 on draining the swamp. This is the swamp, people. This is the swamp. The swamp the swamp does include Nancy Pelosi using insider trading to get wealthy and trading stocks and these other Congress critters that do that. That needs to be put a stop. We need to put a stop to that too, because that's also part of the swamp. But the swamp encompasses all these people who are rich and powerful and think they can just do anything they want because they're rich and powerful. Right. And these victims get no traction because they don't have any power, and no one wants to upset that apple cart. It's crazy.
And the swamp keeps getting bigger because all these people that are behind the cover-up, they're complicit in doing this. And arguably, they're conspirators. Conspiracy, I learned when I was going through Intel school, is the easiest crime to prove because all it takes is two people to agree to do something bad.
Yeah.
They don't even have to do it. But all these people who said that they knew that Epstein was this terrible person and pedophile, right, they knew it, but they didn't reveal it. They didn't report it. They kept it secret. They continue protecting them. They continue protecting each other. That's a conspiracy.
Yep.
Conspiracy to commit a crime is a crime in and of itself.
Well,
so the swamp keeps getting bigger. The crimes keep piling up. Will we ever see the end of this? I don't know. I hope for these young women who were victimized that they get some closure and can heal their lives, knowing that there's been some type of recognition of what they went through. And right now they're just being ignored.
You know, I'm a little bit surprised, and I guess this has something to do with the types of women these folks were trafficking, because I'm a little bit surprised there hasn't been a father or a brother who went all Liam Neeson on them, on somebody, right? This happened to my daughter. I'm going to do something about it myself if the government won't do anything about it. I'm a little surprised that has not happened at all.
Right.
And that tells you something about how regular Americans want to do this the right way. Same as in Minneapolis, right? Regular Americans could just go get their guns and start shooting back at these ICE officers.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's some people, some Second Amendment argument guys who will argue that's exactly what they would do if the left was coming to try to take their guns, right?
Right.
But
that's the whole reason they're such activists about the Second Amendment.
But most Americans want to do things the right way. But guys, I've said this on this show before. This whole system, our whole entire capitalist system, depends on the existence of a set of rules that everyone more or less has to follow, right? And we've all, you and I have talked about Will Hoyt's saying that, how some laws that the law is there to protect some people without binding them, right, the rich people, but it binds poor people without protecting them. There's a lot of that. But at a macro level, this system requires a setup where adjudication of disputes can happen without violence. And those adjudications are, for the most part, fair. Because without that, no one can do any business in a capitalist society, right? No contract really matters if that's not there. And what this is exposing is the fact that there's a group of people out there who the law protects but doesn't bind. They think they can do anything they want and get away with it. And so far, they've been right. And so, I mean, what do you think we can do? I mean, what's the next step to try to bring this down? Because this particular swamp, we need to drain it.
Right. I think for generations, we thought that our form of government was the check on this type of wrongdoing. That our government and the rule of law was what protected us from evil, from bad things going on in the world. You and I, we defended our country because we believed that if any country could provide a safe, fair place for people to live and prosper and raise their families, it was the United States. And now that aspiration that our government, our country would create the environment where people can be safe in their homes, and that people would not be able to take advantage of the system to the degree that they are. It puts all that kind of in question, mm-hmm, in my mind right now. To what extent has our government become the instrument of the oligarchs, of these influential people who commit wrongdoing with impunity? Has our government become one of their tools, or is it a tool of the people to protect the rights of its citizens?
Right.
Right now, I have to say that the jury's out, kind of waiting to see how things play out the next couple of years.
Well, no one wants. I mean, no one wants violence. No one wants violence to be the answer here. I don't think it's practical or desirable in any way for people who are upset about this to just show up at some rich guy's house, Lutnick or whatever, and start using firearms. We saw the downside of that when the QAnon Pizzagate thing went crazy, and the guy showed up at Comet Pizza with an AR-15 and started shooting up the place, right? That's not the answer. But we do have to place pressure on our elected officials to do something about this stuff. Scott, you and I have talked about how the Republicans in Congress have basically abdicated their constitutional role as protectors of Congress's power, right?
Right.
Not the Republican Party's power or the Democratic Party's power, but the power of Congress to make decisions, especially about spending. And this is another example of that abdication. There are prosecutors. Where are the prosecutors in Florida where this stuff happened? Right? If I'm the Attorney General of the state of Florida, I'm looking through these documents, trying to find a crime that was committed in Florida that I could charge. And a lot of this happened at Mar-a-Lago, right?
Yeah.
So same for New York.
Wasn't Pam Bondi the Attorney General in Florida during the Epstein trials in charges?
Well,
back in the day,
Blanche was the prosecutor who made the deal with him. Todd Blanche, who is now an assistant attorney general, I think, under Trump. So Blanche was the guy that gave Epstein that first sweetheart deal. They had him dead to rights on stuff that would have gotten him 40 or 50 years. Mm-hmm. And he got away with probation. And, this is...
Right, because...
Go ahead.
Because the names of others would have come out during that process had it gone to trial, had they gone to discovery. But, in our form, I want to circle back around to my little rant a second ago. We have the rule of law in our country. We have the tools and mechanisms to solve this problem, to correct this problem, to correct what we see, what you and I and many of our fellow Americans see as an imbalance, an unchecked executive power that's permitting these kinds of things that we complain about all the time to happen. And it's called elections. It's called the ballot box. And wouldn't you know it, that one tool that the American public has is now itself coming under siege by the administration, by the executive branch. And we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, as we go on. But, Trump talking about taking the power of elections away from the states and federalizing it, so he's in control of the election to perpetuate his power. That's the one thing that as Americans we can do, is we can change our leadership to change our outcomes. But if we don't have a way to choose new leaders and have a peaceful transfer of power with people having confidence that the winners are the winners and the losers are the losers, then our whole form of government is cut off at the knees. So that all these things kind of circle around, and in my mind, because I spent so much time doing elections, it seems to always come back in my mind to elections.
Yeah, right.
Our elections are when you're a carpenter, every tool looks like a hammer, right?
Yeah, right.
When you're an election official, every solution comes back to elections. Yeah. And I think that Trump and the administration, they know that. They know that historically they're in danger of losing a majority in the House in this upcoming election. And they know that they could lose the majority also in the Senate is becoming more and more in play. The one thing that Americans can do to stop this is now itself being attacked.
Well, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the moment where Americans decided that if they weren't going to be allowed to select their own representatives, they would take another route. They would go down another road. And I'm not advocating this, at least not yet. But honestly, I think Americans believe we're very exceptional in a lot of ways that we're not, right? But I think Americans are exceptional in one way, and that is if you push us far enough, we'll do something about it. and we did it 250 years ago. The Southerners did it in 1860, right? And I think Americans will find a response other than elections if you try to take that away. So when they do that, Scott, you're right. I think that's what they're trying to do. But when they do that, they have to do it in a way that makes it look like they haven't, right?
Right.
And
elections are that peaceful way of transferring power.
Right. But at the end of the day, folks, we're in a situation here where the wealthy and powerful have co-opted basically everything. They've captured the government so they don't have to pay taxes, so their corporations get subsidized for stuff your small business doesn't get subsidized for, right? And Blanche is perhaps a great example of this because, once you fly first class, economy isn't any fun anymore. And you want to try to go first class all the time, right? And once you've been on a private jet, commercial travel is not as much fun anymore, even if it's business class. So you want to get on that private jet again. And I don't know. I'm not accusing Blanche of anything, but it's not hard to infer that one reason he let all that go was because he saw that as a way to get into that group that's flying on private jets. And guess what, folks? He's now in that group, right? He's one of Donald Trump's best buddies now. Bondi's the same. Bondi did him a favor. Now she's on the inside. So I don't think you can, I can't say for sure that's what's happening, but I don't think you can discount it, just like you can't discount the testimony under oath of these dozens of victims who, to circle back, we still need to listen to and find justice for. And I'll say it again, I don't give a damn who did it. They need to rot under the jail as soon as we can possibly get them under there. This is it's also a symptom of a disease that I think a lot of our elite have, is that they don't consider a lot of people to be human, right? The worker's not a human. I need more profit, so I'm just going to lay them off. I don't care if they lose their house and go homeless, right? Because they're not really people. They're just workers. That black guy down the street, that Somalian, that Haitian that they're trying to clean out of Springfield, those aren't really people. We can just drag them out of their homes and throw them in a box and take them to El Salvador because they're not really people. Women, they're just baby machines. They're not really people. Right? So why should they have any rights? The men should have all the rights and they should make decisions for these women. This is their mindset. This is the way they think. And I'm gonna start showing you folks that this is how these people think. They want a white Christian ethno-state with very wealthy technocrats like Elon Musk running it. That's what they're trying to put together. And if we have to make sure we don't give them a chance to do that. So,
right. So, Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation is kind of the blueprint, the plan for how they plan on doing that. And they've been remarkably successful at implementing parts of that Project 2025. Right. As they put together that plan, they got people who had worked in government, who understood how it worked, who understood where the weak points were, understood where the guardrails were, and they got them to come up with a plan to defeat the guardrails, right, to exploit the weaknesses in an organization or a structure. And they put it together in this 2020 Project 2025 that is being actually, you can check the boxes of all the things that are in Project 2025 and the things that the executive branch and Congress and the courts are either doing or permitting to let happen. Right. And it's the people, it's those Christian nationalists that you're talking about that were the architects of that Project 2025. So it's a conspiracy right before our eyes. And we can see it. We've talked about it. we can read it, but as a collectively, we don't believe it, or we didn't believe it, and we're kind of flummoxed as to how to respond to it now that it's in play, being executed.
I think we're coming up on 40 minutes here, so we'll start winding down. But just a couple of final thoughts on my side, Scott. I think that the Project 2025 thing, I think you put that very well. You described that very well. That is exactly the project. This project started basically with Reagan, when the right-wing reactionaries of the time began to understand that the way to win was to capture the courts. Because if you own the Supreme Court, there's very little you can do that will not be made legal some way, right? If the Supreme Court is that all in and that political, and they'll just basically rubber stamp anything you want to do, right? And we've seen them dismantle settled precedent like Roe v. Wade and some of the civil rights legislation and using legal arguments that are spurious at best and ridiculous and even falsified at worst. And that strategy is working. Okay. Now, what Americans need to do is be vigilant. And I think the place to start is for Democrats like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to start fighting fire with fire. And I've said this many times in a lot of different venues, but these guys have to start fire with fire. The moderation part, the reaching out to Liz Cheney and trying to get marginal Republicans to join you is not working. It's not going to work. As long as they can frame this all around the price of eggs, Democrats won't win. Democrats need to point out two things. They need to point out that Republicans own the government and the government is monumentally corrupt. We talked about this in the Looting the State episode, which I urge you all to go back and look at if you haven't seen it yet, right? But Donald Trump he's not only looting the state with the crypto schemes, he's suing his own government for $10 billion. So imagine that I'm suing Scott for $10 billion and I'm the judge that gets to decide whether Scott's guilty or not. Right? And that's the kind of thing they're doing, but they're also setting up the conditions and protecting the conditions where this stuff like Epstein Island can happen, where these people can go to these places, they can traffic these women, right? Young women, underage women. It's no accident that if Project 2025 were fully implemented, then 14-year-old girls would be of legal age to marry. That's not an accident, folks. It's not a coincidence. That's their intent, is to set conditions where rich, wealthy men can do this kind of thing, and the rest of us just have to put up with it. And Democrats need to start talking about that. They need to start with the ICE stuff. This bullshit reform of ICE needs to stop. ICE needs to be drastically curtailed, if not completely disbanded. And we need solid laws on what they can and cannot do. And they need to face the consequences and repercussions when they drag an American citizen out of their car and beat them up or shoot them for no good reason, right? They have to pay for that as individuals and as an organization. And this is the answer. Democrats have to step up. And the way to win elections is to step up like that and explain to people who haven't been paying attention where their inattentiveness is taking us. What do you think, Scott?
Right. Yeah. So I agree that the Democratic Party is sort of the symbol of the resistance that needs to combat the Republicans and the corruption in government. But every organization, every collective is a group of individuals. And I think individual action, and you've heard me say this before, we're clutching our pearls talking about this. You might be, when you watch the evening news or read the newspaper or go through your social media, just being outraged, just being unhappy just throwing things at the TV is not going to change anything. Just telling Democrats they need to fix it isn't going to
No.
isn't going to change anything. All of us as individuals need to take a look at where we are in life, what our sphere of influence is, what talents and abilities we have, and how can we take action, not words, not merely words, but actions. What actions can we take to influence the future events, to get Democrats elected, the right kind of Democrats elected? What can we do to demonstrate to the Republicans in power that we're not okay with this?
Right.
And I'm talking about peaceful things to do. But if individuals don't take that obligation upon themselves, collectively, no action is going to happen, because the collective is just the combination of all of our individual actions. So to all of our listeners, to anyone who clutches their pearls like Stan and I do every week when we talk about these things, get off your ass. Go do something. Do what you can do. Figure out what that is and stay with it. That's the only way individual Americans, are going to change the trajectory that we're currently on.
And there are some concrete things you can do. You can show up at a protest, a No Kings protest, or an indivisible protest, or a local protest against something you think is going wrong where you live. You can run for office, run for local office, run for school board, run for board of supervisors, run for your state legislature, run for office and talk
about neighborhood
meetings. What's that?
Right.
Yeah.
Just organize your neighborhood. Have neighborhood meetings. Have barbecues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends about what's going on, even the folks that don't agree with you. You might find that there's more common ground than you think, especially in the Epstein case. You can write letters to your congressman, to your senator. You can go to their events and tell them what you think. They won't know what you think if you don't tell them. And one way of telling them is to do a podcast like we're doing, and that's useful to an extent, right? But one way to tell them is to go to their office, literally walk into the office. The congressman won't be there, most likely, but there will be a staff member there. Walk into that office and tell that staff member what you think in a nice, polite way. Be an adult about it. But it has a lot of impact when someone takes that much trouble to explain how they feel about things, right? And if you can get, petitions, go to organizations, join your local political committees, join a charity that helps feed people. Any of those things is helpful, because it places you in a community of like-minded people who have a task they think needs to be performed, and then you can help organize them to complete other tasks as well. So talking about it, living it, doing these kinds of things can help quite a bit, right? So
I think what holds a lot of people back is thinking that one person doesn't make a difference, but more ominously, I think it's fear.
Yeah.
To share who it is that you are and what you think and what you think is right and wrong and good and bad. People are afraid to out themselves, if you will, and the government is fine with that.
Yep.
That's what the federal troops, our federal officers, are doing in our cities. They're making it unsafe to express your points of view. Your neighbors, your parents, your siblings, your employer, people at church. Those are all people that sometimes we're afraid of expressing how we really feel. So we have to start with overcoming that basic fear of those people that, and ironically, they're people that are close to us in our lives. They're not the federal officers in body armor and everything. They're people at Sunday dinner. They're people at the PTA. They're, we need to stop being afraid and start being honest, upstanding Americans.
And I can honestly, real quick, give you a very personal example of that. Because when we started this podcast thing last year, I started taking a look at social media in a much more in-depth way, looking at things like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook Reels, these real short little things, because it occurred to me if I was going to be successful as a podcaster, I would have to do some of that too. And I have to tell you, like I was talking earlier about the video I made of the ice warehouse here in Hanover, right? It was honestly difficult for me to stand there and do that, right? To take out, clip a microphone to my collar and take my phone and stand there and record myself talking about that out in public on the street with people driving by,
Right.
wondering what's that crazy dude doing, right? Now, lots of people do that. But if I want to express myself about these problems and these events, that's something I'm just going to have to learn how to do, right? And we didn't learn that kind of thing in the Army. When I had retired from the Army and had to go into business, I had to teach myself how to network at conferences, how to go up to people I've never met before and strike up a conversation. I had to train myself to do that. And over the last 25 years, I got to be pretty good at it, right? And so we have to overcome that initial shyness, walking up to a stranger's door to knock on it and tell them about a political candidate or an issue you care about or a vote that's coming up on a constitutional amendment or whatever it is, right? We have to, as individuals, overcome that. And folks, I can tell you from personal experience that if you overcome that initial shyness, you'll find that most people are very receptive to being approached. Right. Other people want you to talk. They want to have conversations with their fellow human beings. They want that interaction. So don't be so shy. Overcome it. Right.
When I've talked to my neighbors here, when they found out what my point of view was, they felt relieved to know that they weren't the only ones in the neighborhood that felt that same way.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of relief. And if you don't identify yourself, you lose that opportunity to encourage and strengthen others.
So we got to work together. And the one way we can work together on this is for you folks to subscribe and like and comment on these podcasts. Find us on these other platforms. We're, of course, at foggybottomline.com. And I created a link tree. So here's the link tree URL, which will take you to the Instagram and the TikTok and the YouTube and the Facebook and the X and the Blue Sky and all that other junk, right? So check us out on these different platforms. There's different content on different platforms. This is the base podcast. We keep promising there's more to come, and there is. So watch, subscribe, take a look. Let us know what you think. We're starting to get some comments. We respond to them, and we appreciate any feedback you get, even those two guys that said we were both clueless after the Davos podcast. And, maybe they're right.
At least they listened long enough to figure that out. Yeah.
So, but even if you think we're clueless, tell us that, right? And tell us why you think we're clueless. Tell us what you think we're wrong about, because we're both reality-based guys, right? If you got evidence that I'm wrong about something, I will change my mind every time, because that's what smart people do, right? Intelligent people with emotional intelligence, if you have evidence and you can convince them that they're wrong, they'll change their mind and they'll say, right, thank you for making me a better soldier, right? So I think we'll wrap it up for today. Scott, any final thoughts on Epstein and the cabal, as it were? There's no basement at Comet Pizza, folks. There's not a basement there.
Yeah. No, it's just sad that we're here. But I said at the beginning that this is a really sloppy cover-up, and we need to keep in mind it is a cover-up. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt anymore. No. We need to hold their feet to the fire and tell them to stop covering it up, to put all the cards on the table, to make full disclosure, to fix the redaction issues, whether the over-redaction or the under-redaction. We need to keep their feet to the fire and say, we're not going to put up with this cover-up. I remember as a high school kid during Watergate, cover-up was one of those terms that you heard all the time. That was a Three Stooges kind of cover-up. back during the Watergate era, but it looks like a professional job compared to what we see right
Right.
now.
And again, we want to see all of the documents generated by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, by local prosecutors, state attorneys general, state prosecutors, county prosecutors. I want to know what prosecutors have looked at this and did nothing. Because if that guy's an elected county Commonwealth's attorney or something like that, I want to know so I can find an attorney to run against them in the next election, because they need to go. Right. If they're overlooking this, if they're looking past this for some reason, they need to go or explain why they did it. So there's going to be a lot more on this, folks. This is not over. Lots more to come out. We're going to keep pushing it. I know a lot of you out there are going to keep pushing it. You can help us push it by checking us out, subscribe, like, share, and all that good stuff. Scott, appreciate you again, sir. Thanks for joining us for a Hump Day session. And we will get together again next week. And we're going to start talking about elections, because the other thing that happened this week that's important is Trump talking about nationalizing elections. So next week we'll be talking about that. And Scott, I'm going to get you to help us with some of your expertise on how this actually works, so we can figure out what we can do if they try to steal the elections. What can we do to put a stop to that, right? So glad to have you on the team on that. So thanks for joining me. Folks, thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Go to www.foggybottomline.com. Find us on YouTube at Foggy Bottom Line Media. Check us out, and we will see you next week, if not sooner. Scott, take care, sir.
Okay. Carry on.
Carry on. This is Stan Scott from Foggy Bottom Line Media, and I'm out here. Thanks for watching, folks.